The costs of slow decision in modern enterprises. Have you ever seen a company full of world-class talent moving like it's still on dial-up? It's not the culture, that's the decision latency.
And latency is expensive. Study by McKinsey, based on Fortune 500 companies, actually estimated that inefficient decision making burns 530,000 manager days a year. That's $250 million in wages. And that's even before you start counting the revenue you never see.
And so that's like indecision, that's like interest you pay every day. Welcome back to Capital One Code. Today we're going to talk about something every enterprise feels, but only few quantify it. And that's the cost of slow decisions. And why the real expense isn't always the wrong call, but actually the time it takes you to make one.
Yeah. And we're keeping this discussion today decision grade. So, what does that mean? We're going to talk about where the money leaks, where the risk spikes, and what you can actually fix Monday morning.
And we're going to start with the latency tax. Let's start with that. Let's silence the surcharge that every large company pays when decisions drag on. And what do we mean by that? Is especially the smaller companies, they have the biggest advantage is their speed, and the speed that they have mostly comes from the decision speed that they can make. Why? It's because they have usually small teams or sole decision makers that can really make fast decisions. Once you get way bigger, you see that actually like the biggest advantage that the startups have and the smaller companies have are going to be the biggest disadvantages that companies, the enterprises have. And that's the huge amount of surcharge that you have to pay because you have the decision latency.
Yeah. Now, maybe to echo that, right? So, I'm going to go back to the same McKinsey report, but I'm going to state something which for every
Did they
leader
sponsor you or did they sponsor the podcast? I don't know. Huh?
implies paying me, Maurice, and they most certainly did not do that. But I'm going to state something which, for a lot of executive and leaders, is going to be something they recognize immediately. Leaders spend an enormous time on decision. According to the report, it's nearly 40% of their week. I'm going to be very honest. I think it's a lot more than 40%.
Yeah,
But
I think so too. Yeah,
let's just
100.
assume 40%. I think it's worse than that. But hey, but more importantly, 61% of leaders actually say that half of their time is ineffective. So it gets worse, right, Maurice?
It absolutely gets worse. And that really just also clarifies how big that problem is. The problem is not the wrong decision, but it's the amount of time you spend in meetings, in reworks, in stalling. Huh? We see it almost every day, right? And the let's think again next week, or let's talk about it next week, or let's decide next month. And what's going to happen? The speed is going to go away, and also the motivation is going to go away.
Yeah, and I think speed isn't the trade off to quality, it's confusion. Confusion is the trade off.
Yeah, and here's the simplest model, right? It's the direct label burn, it's the opportunity cost, it's the also the risk amplification, I would say, because every hour you delay is fuel poured in one of these buckets, right? It's fueling up.
Now, this may feel a little bit abstract, right? So let's try this. Which decisions did we delay last quarter that forced us into overtime or into expedited shipping? We all know those examples.
Yeah, and that makes delay turns into coordination in a second job, right?
Yeah, I think you both from a product and project management perspective, me as a former CFO and an executive, delays just means you create so much additional headache, so much additional work, Maurice. And I really think that this is a massively underestimated part of the challenges that larger organizations face. And maybe one of those challenges is, the vote versus voice
Yeah,
decision rights.
that's a very good one. I think that's a very big part in this, right? It's not the disagreement, but it's who has the decision rights on and on what.
Yeah. Yeah, and who has a vote versus who has a voice.
Yeah, that's true. Because yeah, that's the thing. Consensus is making people feel safe, but who really actually pulls the trigger, right?
Yeah, and we all have been in those meetings, right? Meeting with 14 people who are aligning, but no one actually owns the call. And afterwards, those same 14 people complain that nothing moves forward. That's not alignment. That's a shared alibi.
Yeah, and I think that also comes back to the process, the framework that we use. The simple tool in the organization is the so-called rapid. The recommend, agree, perform, input, and last but not least, decide. It's no magic, it's just clarity. Because everyone wants the clarity.
Yeah. And here's a quick test if you don't understand what that means. If you're in a meeting and you pass the meeting right there and then, could everyone name the decider in one sentence? Right? A lot of times people are not actually quite clear who is the decider.
It is true. And that's what you see almost every day. Yeah, everyone owns it, but nobody ships it.
Now, and that brings me to a next point, which arguably is a bit of a frustration point, right? It's meeting design and how to ensure decision grade information. Again, fancy words, but for a very clear problem.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's just declare the war on the 40 slide update, right? Let's just do that, Michael. I mean,
I 100% agree, right? I've been in board meetings, and this is not a joke, where we had 60 PowerPoint slide meetings, and you have 2 hours to wrestle through 60 PowerPoint slides, actually have valuable dialogue and discussion. Most importantly, make decision is near impossible, right? So unpopular opinion, but most meetings keep people busy, not productive.
that is absolutely true. They should be short pre-reads, and they should also have the clear decisions at the top. Yeah, you want to make the most important decisions first, and the reports you want to do second. Because you want to speed it up and you want to make sure that you have enough time to actually also decide, because people have decision fatigue, right? You have to decide so many times on a day. I mean, maybe more than 100 decisions you have to do on a daily basis, so you want to do the most important decisions a day, otherwise you're going to shift them again to next week.
And also, everybody's seen this, right? A team ships a massive PowerPoint document, your favorite, Maurice. In a meeting, everybody nods, no decision is taken. Next week, same deck, different fonts. It's not management, it's theater, it's keeping busy.
That's true. And more data doesn't equal more clarity, right? That's, if you talk about the 40-page slide, you can better make a few slides. Moreover, I think that's actually also, if you talk about only using a few slides, is going to sharpen what you want to communicate, and it's going to sharpen and highlight what's actually very important, right? It's the same thing with if you do an elevator pitch in marketing, the famous elevator pitch of 10 to 15 seconds.
Yep,
Sharpen your pitch and
yep,
actually condense all that information, everything you do at a business that is so complicated and so
yep.
special, and put it in that 10 to 15 seconds. And are you able to convey that message? And that's actually also the same way how you want to get these information condensed into one particular, like
Yeah,
short.
yeah. I'm gonna make a very useful tip, but before I do that, there's a bit of frustration I need to get let go of, right? So, how often has it happened to you and me, Maurice? There is a high priority, important meeting scheduled in their calendars, and we actually received the supporting documents 15 minutes prior to the aforementioned meeting, which we then subsequently need to assume that we've read, understood, and are ready to take a decision about them. And I think a lot of to do have, if you do not put in the effort into preparation by providing a very clear memo. Look, this is what we're talking about. This is the problem, the challenge, the opportunity, whatever it is. This is what we need to decide coming out of this meeting. Everybody needs to be on the same page. So every meeting should start with a single line, with a single purpose. What decision are we making in the next 30 to 60 minutes, however long the meeting is? And what happens if we don't make that decision?
Yeah.
You rarely see that, and it's rarely addressed in any deck or memo you receive. And I think this really comes back to another topic that you and I are I wouldn't say passionate about, because passionate implies that we're now excited about it. I think it's probably closer to frustrated about,
Yeah.
but it's execution yield. What do I mean with that? Stop reopening decisions that you've already taken. So Bain, we need to stop talking about McKinsey. So now we're going to talk about Bain, Modi. So
I definitely think you have a sponsor deal with them, but yeah. No.
again, I would love to. So Bain breaks down decision effectiveness into four parts: quality, speed, yield, and effort. Yield, the likelihood the decision is actually executed, is the silent killer in many decisions.
Yeah, and it's like a decision, quote unquote decision. Nobody commits to. It's not a decision, huh? It's just a delay with applause
Yeah.
because there's no commitment. So
No,
there's nothing gonna happen.
no. Like revisiting decision feels like prudence. Most of the time, it's fear, right? And it taxes the entire portfolio. So you can take a decision, but if it's not clear who has the ownership of that decision, who has the ownership of executing against that decision, who has the ownership of providing an update to the actions flowing from the decisions, you don't have a decision.
Yeah, and I've seen leadership teams approve the same program 3 times. Each time the team restarts the plans, vendors requote, timeline reset. It's just a compounding waste. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it is unbelievable. And there is a simple fix, honestly. So you only reopen a decision when there is materially new information or a threshold breach that you've set. If it doesn't meet either of those criteria, you stick with the decision that you've made. You hold people accountable for the decision that you've made.
I agree. I can only agree. I think this is already the second one that we agree so much, right? So,
Yeah, I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried, but I actually think that because our listeners know that we don't always agree, but I think this is a frustration topic, right? How to get to effective decision making.
and I think even the people that drag these decisions and are in these board meetings, they all have these same frustrations, right? But again, this is also the thing. No one does anything about it because the decision to change it also gets a delay and also doesn't get a priority, isn't it? Yeah.
So again, unpopular opinion of the day: a decision that you keep reopening isn't actually a decision. It's called a recurring meeting, right?
It is a recurring meeting. Absolutely. Let's push on to the next segment, and that's push decisions to the edge with God.
Let's.
Now I'm going to start with McKinsey. I think McKinsey's guidance is quite clear on this. Yeah.
It was a very good report, right? So what do
Yeah,
you?
it was definitely a very good report, I must say. Yeah. But their decision guidance is quite clear. Push decision authority to the front line with God.
Yeah, I think that is a really good concept, right? So this isn't move fast and break things. It's setting risk limits so teams can move without waiting for permission. That is so valuable, Maurice.
It is 100%. You want to know where the boundaries are, and the boundaries should be tied to those risks so that everyone can just, everyone feels that they have a playing field where they don't have to get approval for every single thing, almost have to ask approval to get a new coffee. You want to give them the freedom to know where are the boundaries, how can I move, and what kind of decisions can I make.
I don't think you should talk about coffee machines and boundaries. I've seen companies have committees on purchasing a new coffee machine.
Yeah,
But so let's just stick to IT for now, because when it goes to coffee machines, people get very emotional. But I think people need to start thinking of headquarters of organizations like an air traffic controller, trying to fly the planes too, right? It doesn't scales. So you need rules. You don't need a joystick.
yeah, I agree. And I think you should ask which decisions should be quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, and have that certain cadence because that guidance is your governance. What do you decide, when, why, how, so you have it prioritized.
Yeah, and guardrails beat gatekeepers, right? So maybe to kind of circle back what we're talking about here today, right? We're talking about the inability to make decisions. We're talking about the continuous and frequent reopening of decisions, what effectively means you're not moving forward. And we're talking about guardrails, right? So I think what we're really saying is enable a governance that allows people to move forward and provide them with the guardrails, the risk management around it. And this is based really on trust, right? It's about trusting your organization, trusting your governance to make sure those risks are mitigated. And I think, especially as organizations grow in scale and in complexity, Maurice, this problem becomes bigger, right?
It is, yeah.
We've talked a lot about the McKinseys and the Bains of the podcast in today's podcast, but that's obviously the reason why large consulting companies have jobs to begin with,
Yeah,
because organizations are not getting this right.
they're not getting this right. Yeah, and it's also quite complicated. Huh? I mean,
It's massively complicated. I think the companies that get it right are the companies that are successful. And I think and most companies are not successful. Most companies are mediocre. Most companies are struggling.
that is true.
We're
And this
talking
is
about
one
the
of the
top.
very important parts. Yeah,
We're talking about the top 2% here. Companies who really embed this in their organizational culture will move forward.
yeah, yeah.
It's a massively interesting topic. I'm going to be very honest. I think we could talk about this for an hour and a half.
Yeah, we went very fast through this one. I think we should, do some other ones, additional ones in this one. But let's just, yeah, close it out for today. So if your organization feels slow, definitely don't start with the culture posters with the nice quotes, but really start with the dirty plumbing work, the decision plumbing work. Who can decide on what, and what are the boundaries?
We're going to be back next week with another episode. And if there's a technology challenge that you're wrestling with, reach out. That's what we're here for.
Capital and Code. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for listening.